Okay, hello everyone. We are live. I'm sure there will be people joining throughout, but this is just an intro to the start of the video if you're watching the replay of this. So I'm with Wayne Pashley, who's supervising sound editor, sound designer, re-recording mixer on most recently Mad Max, as well as the Lego Movie, Great Gatsby, Happy Feet 2, Australia. I mean, it's a very varied profile, which is fantastic. So we're going to be talking all about both animation and everything sound design in terms of live action and his different approaches. So, hi, Wayne.
Hello there, Matt. How are you?
I'm very well. Cool. So we'll just we'll just get started with the classic questions of how did you decide to get into sound design?
Well, I started my career at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and I started in the neg room at the time when film was still the rage, and that was my first sort of start. I went into sound from there, working with 16mm on quite a few of the bigger mini-series that were going through the drama unit at the ABC. And stayed in sound for a while. I saw the benefits of it and saw, the growth. I particularly loved the music that was coming in. I was really excited about it because I grew up wanting to be in film making. I didn't know where I was actually going to end up, but films like Star Wars did change my life in 1977, and so subsequently from there I went into picture and became a first assistant editor on a lot of those same sort of size mini-series. From there, I found it just felt a little bit hemmed in and a little bit bogged down, and I realized at that point how much I actually loved sound and the impact that sound was having to the story and to the characters. And I particularly enjoy working with actors as well. And I saw that there was an opportunity to work with the actors in a post sense, and of course that obviously comes in sound, not so much in the picture side of things. So that's basically where I sort of started up. And having left the ABC, I then got my first freelance job on a feature film called Luigi's Ladies, with this wonderful director by the name of Judy Morris. And of course she was also an actor. She wasn't in the film, but she has been an actor in the past, worked with Peter Weir a lot and people like that. And she showed me the benefits of sound in a sense that what we were able to do, even on a budgetary level, was so impressive. And the value for story was immense, and that was really the time when I realized that that's where I'm staying, and that's where I wanted to focus my attentions. And so that's where I started. That became my love for it. And of course, I was lucky enough to, at that time in Australia, we had a lot of high-profile directors.
In terms of getting into the post side of things, you have dabbled in both sound effects recording, dialogue editing. Again, you said you like working with actors, and it's obviously gone into the ADR sense. How did you what was the reason in circling the areas first, and what were you always trying to progress towards? Was there a certain direction that you were going to?
I think the main thing for me has always been the script and the characters. And when you start out in doing post, and it's all about effects, and it's about going out and recording the best noises, something fresh and new, things that libraries I try to avoid as much as possible, and so we tend to do a lot of recording straight off the bat. And so once we get the sort of effects design going, which is the not only the obvious, but after we get the obvious down and creating the sort of the nuances of what each world should sound like, including atmospherics, I then really flip it and start looking at the thematic structure of the story itself and obviously the characters. So that's where I then pick up a good slice of the post-time and start to really aim towards dialogues. It's always got to be king, and so the benefits of that is once you see what you can clean up, what you can use from the location and the production sound, you start to sort of go, okay, where can we increase the dramatic power through character? And of course, it starts to lean towards ADR and crowd recording and putting human beings in the story, because this is the reason why we write the scripts, why we make movies and TV, and it's all about the human experience. And if you don't have that human experience, people aren't going to really care. It doesn't matter how groovy the visual effects are, or the cinematography, or the costumes, or whatever. People get pretty sort of used to that and kind of get a little bit sort of bored of it pretty quickly. So I think that once you find that character-driven, pathway, you can start to open up the stories in places where you can really help the filmmaking team, the director, to see a bigger vision that may not have been captured on the day. Also, what that does is by going into the ADR room and working with the cast, you get a bonus there. You get a connection throughout post with the director, so you understand their vision and what they were trying to do from the outset, from the first time it was on a page through to where we are right there. And then, so you're getting all that feedback, which you normally, in a lot of cases with schedules and things, you're not getting a whole lot of time with the director unless you're in the ADR room. And the other side of it is then you bring the cast in and what they see when they are now sort of examining the picture edit of any given scene and the continuity of performance and what they can achieve to lift it once again. So I find that very, very exciting. And, it's a tricky collaborative step that you've got to take before you hit a mix, the final mix, and all of a sudden the director is seeing a whole new experience, generally speaking, we've had a lot of success with that, and maybe also my excitement towards all that has also come from animation, and seeing what you can do with voice work straight off the bat, and having voice work drive the pictures. Like having worked with Robin Williams and rest his soul, and all those wonderful comics, Elijah Wood, and even in Happy Feet 2 with Brad Pitt and Matt Damon, and seeing what they can do in a space with a microphone, being completely free of how they look, what the lights are doing, what they make, no makeup, all that stuff. It's the room of no shame, and to see what performers can do in front of a microphone is incredibly exciting. And to gather that material and to be able to cut it and get rhythms and pacing. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate to have worked with some of the biggest sort of incredible cast in the world, and to see someone like Robin work was mind-blowing. He's an athlete, and in a sense, where there is no stopping the genius that was coming, and to choose what was going to go into a film like Happy Feet was really, really difficult, but so every day was so exciting. So I think with all that, that's why I find a good part of my time is spent on dialogues in any given schedule. So that's sort of how I divide my time, and I tend to pick, in terms of effects, I tend to pick just a handful of primary items because of the time. Obviously, I can't do everything. I've got a fantastic team around me who I've worked with for 25 years, some of them, and we have a shorthand, and we have very similar taste. Some people might say, whether taste has anything to do with it. Taste is, it's whether it's right or wrong. Whatever some people might think about taste. But I do believe that that taste has a very, very strong feel to it. And I think when I see people's work like Richard King or Ben Burt, you can feel their input, you can feel the style and the mix and the way things work and their storytelling, and doing handovers where it's dialogue is important, now it's effects is important, now music is important, and to continually keep an audience on the wave, if you like. If you sit on something too long, it's like anything. It becomes, especially in today's high speed, chaos of communication. I can just say with my kids, they get bored very quickly. Or once they've seen it, okay, moving on. So I try to do that with sound and using what we have at our disposal. We've got dialogue, we've got atmospherics, we've got Foley, effects, and we've got music. And I think if you can continually sort of surprise, that's what I'm always striving for.
Fantastic. And in terms of the people kind of...
wasn't it?
No, it's fantastic. There's so much in there that we can go back over. Firstly, I think one of the kind of burning questions on people's mind, especially me when I kind of do post work on my own stuff, is kind of at what point are you getting to a point that you kind of are understanding your own style? And obviously maybe at the beginning you're choosing from different places, but what has kind of influenced you on the way to getting your own style, and when did you kind of feel that it was yours?
Well, I sort of think I find that I suppose, stylistically, if I was to sort of pick an element, I always strive for clarity. And I think that a lot of films I see today, when I miss words, I just get so irritated by it. It's like, don't write it down, don't get the actor to say it unless we're all going to hear it. And I think that's where, I try so hard to keep things away from dialogue. And it's not just dialogue, it's even, I'm not sure what everyone calls this, but breaths and grunts, the sort of internal character, and to keep characters alive on screen, because ultimately, in terms of a broad audience, without all of our sound artistic friends and trying to accommodate their needs, I'm just like trying to look after average Joe. I just know that if my mother sees something and cannot understand it, it's just irritating. So I guess if I was to pick a very basic primary sort of like item, it would be dialogues and keeping out of the way. Second to that, you got to put them in the world, and to give the extension of disbelief, and to put people into a place that they would normally never go or may never have been before. So I must say that I would say stylistically that would be my sort of deal. I think that there was a time when just in the history in the 80s and everything, when everything became big and bolshy with effects and punches and things and guns, and sure, there's a big place for that, and it's stylistically depending on the film. But even with that nowadays, as we sort of were in the 21st century, I find that that's also had its day, and I've tried to find other ways to tell a gunshot that is not normal as it might be. It is more about how the character would interpret the gunshot, whether they are firing the gun or whether they are receiving the result of the gunshot. And so I'm always trying to find something that is always internalized for the the character on screen. It also goes down to Foley. Foley, for me, is all about character. What they wear. I mean, we've all read and heard people, wonderful costume people, Edith Head and Catherine Martin, who, these people understand character, and I try to be with them as well. I look at each department and say, why? I just question myself, why has Catherine Martin chosen this sort of, evening wear for Daisy Buchanan and Gatsby? There is a reason behind it and why it's like that, and what can I do with sound to actually up that, because it's all character. So really, I think that's stylistically, if I was to pick anything, that would be what it is. You know, I mean, Ben Burt, we all know, has built a career on these incredible sound effects. You know, from another world. That's, you know, today they're still being used. Lightsabers, the lightsaber sound is synonymous with Ben Burt. You know, I don't think I've necessarily achieved that. That would be nice, you know, but yeah, I mean, that's where I suppose where my style rests, is in character.
It's really interesting with your point all about character, and especially kind of the move from 80s from, let's say, like the obvious, make it bigger, make it better, going to a more, again, it's always interesting to find how many different ways we can come back to the story, especially in sound, and obviously dialogue being king, it's kind of seen as the most kind of literal way in terms of the actual words, but in terms of, let's say, how they're said and things like that. And it's very interesting with your work, specifically with like Great Gatsby and things, where I know from talking to the production mixer actually that most of the work was done in the ADR realm, and so you had a lot more control over kind of being an architect of that complete sound design. What was that like to have that much kind of control over a story?
Well, I think that was very exciting, and I know that when you know, there's the ability to use the production sound, all will always go there first. And when you've got something like Gatsby, and if you had seen with a film like that and a story that Fitzgerald had put on paper, which is all first-person thought, it means that Baz Luhrmann was able to take that infrastructure of story and really do whatever he liked with it, because you then got the ability in a picture editing sense to flash forward, to flash back, to stay in the present, to flash forward, back, and sometimes flash back within 3 depths of a flashback, depending what's happening. So what happens is from the set itself, there's so much going on with, you know, if it's not green screen, with fans, or there's crowds, or there's music playback just to get the people dancing. Plus, Baz loves to work with a loudhailer, like the like the old days, and like screaming across. So people are talking, and you've got Baz giving directives across it. So of course, I always feel very. My heart goes out to the production mixer in a situation like that, because there's not a whole lot you can do but get the best guide track you can do. But then what happens is when the picture edit becomes so complex that a scene may have been shot over 3 or 4 days, and by the time the scene is actually realized in a 5-minute sequence, you just can feel the continuity of performance a little lumpy, if you like, and a little jagged. And you just know with the quality of performers that there's going to be an issue later. So the best thing that we can do is we try to keep things down to a minimum, and then offer up the options. Yeah, given the budget, we offer up the options. We say, look, here is a necessity. This material here that you've said is damaged. It's inaudible. It could be distorted. It could be whatever. But we have in our back pocket the other cues that if you want, you can give us more, and you can take it wherever you like. So what I always offer with Baz, and Baz tends to, you know, give me a lot of rope. So what we'll do is we'll always mix the production anyway, as bad as it might be in terms of, you know, audibility and clarity, but then I'll offer him a ADR version like the production performance. So the cast generally is the rules. You know, in a situation like Gatsby, the one major sound design note I got from Baz was protect Fitzgerald. Okay. So we know we had to protect Fitzgerald. So that was primacy. So then you get in the ADR room and you offer up to Kerry Mulligan or Tobey Maguire or Leo or whatever, give us one like the production. Sometimes they won't give you one like the productions because they don't like it, but they'll tend to give you one so I can offer Baz what he's chosen. Then Baz is great with cast because he was an actor himself, and he then allows the cast to play. And Kerry, we had about probably 50% of her performance queued up for technical reasons. She came in, saw immediately that her vocal quality, just in terms of pitch, was not Fitzgerald. Now, on the day, she was performing with all the light, doing whatever that happens there on set. But when she saw it as a piece, she realised that when Fitzgerald talks about Daisy's voice being this beautiful, seductive thing where men lean in to hear her and all that sort of stuff, that beautiful poetry, it wasn't in her pitch. She then chose to do the entire movie.
Right.
And that was off her own bat.
Wow.
So whatever fears she might have had walking into an ADR room in the first instance, straight went out the window immediately. And then where we had maybe 8 hours planned for her, we then had 3 days. So, but to me, and in the final mix, it's all there. It's 100% because she wanted to do it. And of course, once that happens, it then affects someone else because then all of a sudden you've got great sonic sound power of one person, and you've got to sort of start to bring in the other cast member to match sonically, so they have equal sound power on screen. So that was kind of an interesting example, really. But having worked with Baz before, I knew what I was in for. You know, it's wild filmmaking, without a doubt.
And how much did you have to get more people back in just because that performance was completely ADR'd? Was it just?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And then what we tend to do is we try to supply, as the picture edit is going forward, as you know these days, the picture edit doesn't stop just because sound starts. And so we're constantly chasing and reconforming and building and building and building as we go. So as we're building, for example, we probably had Tobey Maguire in the ADR room probably about 8 times throughout the process. A little bit here, a little bit there. And as we would gather the material, we would cut the material, and we would offer it up into the picture editorial arena. So then the picture editor has the like production version. Then they've got the play, have fun version. So the director is seeing and hearing the results of the ADR on an iterative sense. So it's kind of like iterative filmmaking. You're sort of staying with the picture editor and keeping the whole process in tow. So when we hit the final mix, it's not a massive surprise necessarily. You know, sometimes it can be, but generally speaking, we try to inform the picture edit because it's not going to stop. So we might as well have no surprises. I used to think, oh, gee, aren't we clever with sound design, and we'll do these groovy things with effects and stuff, and we'll do this and that, and then we'll get to the final mix and we'll, you know, hey, look what we've done. It's a really bad call. You've got to involve the entire filmmaking team. Now, I learned that many years ago, that surprises aren't necessarily going to benefit anyone. So I try to now, I stay very closely hinged to the picture editor now as much as possible, and if possible, the composer. So once, you know, it's very difficult with the music guys because they're pushed to the limit as well. They're constantly doing iterative sort of examples as well, and that's being fed into the cut, and the cut's still going on, and we're trying to put dialogue and effects, and keeping the world alive and keeping it always live until the time when the baby is born at the other end, and you've got to let your child go to college, whatever you want to say at that point when it's off on screen. And so we try to keep it as live as possible now, just because technology has enabled that. We're stuck to flatbeds and synchronizers and spacing and using sticky tape to join things, which is obviously a lot harder back there to do this. But that's what we try to do, is just is keep the film, keep us all together. It is a collaborative effort. You can't do it alone. Like I said, my crew, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you without those guys, because they're just extraordinary. And I know once you have faith and a connection and a love for the same thing and taste for the same end result and the taste of how it's going to be, having given a lot of directives, you just know that at the end of the day, by having that faith and allowing people to do what they do, is going to better what you ever thought it could be. I see material coming in from some of the effects editors or the crowd editors, or I tend to do all the atmospheres generally myself if I've got the time, because I like to create the world, and then I feed the mix downs to all the other crew members, so they're working to something and they're getting their levels right to it. So I think it's a big, as everyone knows, it's a big collaborative effort. You can't do it alone, and it's wonderful to work with a director that understands that. Yeah. I just finished a film with Russell Crowe, his first directorial efforts, a film called The Water Diviner, and of course I went into that film a little bit, working with a superstar, Oscar-winning actor, and I kind of thought, what's this going to be like? Because I've never really done that. I mean, way back I did with Yahoo Serious. That was the closest I got to an actor-director. But Russell Crowe was a whole other sort of bag of fish, if you like. And so going into that process was very interesting, because I had to divorce myself from the fact that I'm now sitting with Russell Crowe, working on his movie, a very strong man. He's got his own thoughts and everything else, but what an extraordinary collaborator. And it was a joy, because he understood that, because he's seen enough, he's in his career of how films are made, and he gets it, that you don't tie down the art director. You've got to let them do their thing, or whatever it might be, any other discipline. And it was a great joy to I know, first-time director, but he allowed us to be free, and it was a great opportunity.
Collaborating constantly with the picture edit department, because when obviously we like the classic ideal, especially in like indie scenes, let's say as well, is that you got to have a locked picture, because it's going to save you kind of more time, more money, more effort. You've got less people working on it and things like that. But I'm definitely finding that with the technology, again, being a key factor, just being able to do that now makes it an option, which is likely to obviously just continue as we go on to try and get films out kind of as fast and as fresh as possible. But in terms of how that kind of organized chaos is managed, could you just talk more about that?
Okay, well, this is where assistant editors are so very, very important. Over the last 10 years, I've seen the slow attrition in the budgets to allow young people to come up and to learn and to get all those opportunities that I had. And it worries me, there's no question, because where you used to have 4 or 5 assistant editors in whatever discipline within the sound post, you're now down to 2. And it's a tough job, because it's not just cleaning the Steenbeck and getting a coffee anymore, and making the trims, make sure the trims are filed. It's an administrative nightmare at times. So you're looking for people that have that ability, who have a structured thought pattern, that are proactive, they can see what's coming, that can, use all the technology, just like you've got here now, with Google Docs and all those sort of things that inform and keep information flowing. Not only that, is you've got all the assets, the assets from the set, polyphonic files, the distribution of those, the protection of those, the security that is now, circling every time that we get a delivery, with picture and sound. It's a massive job, and again, in terms of your team, you've got to have faith that this material is backed up and is accessible and secure. So I really encourage assistants to really get their administrative skills down first, to be able to write an email that makes sense, that is savvy with dealing with producers or production assistants and booking ADR or whatever. There is all the sound element, but I would say in terms of an assistant, 50% of the job is administrative skill, and to be able to make sure information is out there, to the correct people and intelligently done. So it is an incredibly important role that I'm struggling to make sure that the production understand that, and subsequently the budgets do allow for it. So it even goes down to runners. I'm now finding that we're being asked in our budget to have a sound runner. And that's quite extraordinary. That's now part of our budget, and you need it. I mean, it's the security, it's the encrypted files, it's carrying petty cache, it's moving things from the final mix stage back to our place where it's it's all post. I've got pre-dub stages, things like that. But the constant moving of files and buying dinner for late work, when you're doing overtime and making sure the crew is fed, that sort of thing. So, it's just trying to keep it, intelligent and not burn people, and that's where you need help,
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. But as well as that, I'm just trying to fathom how, obviously, with films of such size as Great Gatsby and things like that, especially with all the different layers, all the different size projects, you have the runners delivering it and the picture department still cutting it. But how is there a kind of a limit, or is there a kind of a schedule of we will take a new cut every 2 days, or are you just constantly in that flux of updating and you just ride with it and then have a review?
That's a really very, very interesting question, because unless you've built that relationship with the picture editorial team, the first assistant within the picture editorial department understands what we need, and the picture editor, of course, is that on something like The Great Gatsby, seriously, I would be driving to work and we'd have a morning catch-up with the editor as just a quickie. He's driving to work, I'm driving to work. What's happening today? Lovely, lovely. Okay, you've given us a cut yesterday. We have so much to do on it. Do not give us another cut if it's in flux for at least another week, or whatever it might be. But they will inform us to the milestones that are ahead of us. If there's a what do you call them, a test screening, an audience preview, or those sort of things, to give us enough planning and scheduling. Temp mixes are tough because they always end up, you end up getting about 5 days to turn around a cut that makes sense. It's obviously not a polished event, but you know that it's so important to everybody, the studio, everybody, marketing, how this is all going to work. There's a lot of pressure in temps. At times, you can whinge and whine about it, going, oh, and you're doing late hours, and oh, what's it all for? By the time it's done, you realize the benefits of it. What's working, what isn't working. Okay, that effect really is lame. We've got to fix it. It's never worked. We're going to have to think of a new way. And so I find, again, in terms of iterative filmmaking, which is what we do now, is you're constantly in check. So as much as temps are hard, it's a very important part of the process for everybody. But that all comes down to, when is the picture delivery coming? How much chasing do we do? You've just got to try and map it and hope for the best. Sometimes you're hanging on, pretty tightly there. But lower budget films don't have that sort of luxury, I guess, of constant changes. That's not to say that it doesn't keep happening.
Yeah.
And in that sort of situation, when you've got a very short period of time, you've got to go as far as you can before you get a new cut in, because you know that as you walk down the corridor past all the editing rooms or the picture or the sound editors, and if you're not hearing sounds coming out, you know that it's all about number crunching, and that's scary when the clock's ticking, but it has to be done. So all the reconforming, and it's all about just patching. You think, oh, geez, So a lot of time is taken up by continual reconforming, but you've just got to pick your milestones very carefully and not go crazy and just bury people in numbers.
Well, it sounds like. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it's just it. So it sounds like you obviously craft out your own schedule with your own relationships that you've built up.
Pretty much.
So I guess the reason one reason I guess you have to kind of just keep going is because the film is kept being cut and you've got so much work to do. But I guess the next thing is to kind of still get a fuller, broader sense of the whole arcs and character development and everything else. So you're having more of an idea as you stumble further and further down the rabbit hole.
Oh, for sure. The Lego Movie was a prime example of that because it was so chaotic with the energy on screen, the jokes, the amount of dialogue, the amount of primary effects that are obviously storytelling gags or whatever, compared to something going on, just a little bit mid-screen that you think, that's probably important as well. So the next thing you find is where do we not become an assault? Very tricky stuff. And then the composer, brilliant, composition in that film. But as that was developing, similar to us, is that Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo, he did this beautiful orchestrated score, so very epic in nature and live instruments and orchestration. Then a whole other layer appeared, which was all electronica. On top of that, you go, oh, jeez. So sonically, that was a worry for me because I thought it's a kid's film. It can't be an assault, and it's got to be funny. The jokes have got to be clear. That was obviously a primacy in that film. It was about character, but also the comedy. And so going into a final mix of that where you're covering yourself in the event that one of the directors may want something, there was a point that you had to go, you've got to let go. You got and do what you feel is right for clarity, story, and comedy in that particular case. But that took a while to find the right balance and thread of that story reveal. It did take some time, and that's where I think there was about four or perhaps even 5 test screenings that Warner Brothers did, and again, very informative of the picture cut, informative of the music, informative of where we failed in delivering clarity, and yes, again, it's a really important process if the schedule allows.
Well, it's really interesting, just because I was going to move on from, obviously, if it's chaotic doing live action where things are constantly being cut and ADRs coming in, then surely there's slightly more control in terms of the animation aspects. But then again, I guess then you have so many options that then it becomes equally as chaotic because you can't.
Oh, it can. Oh, look, honestly, I felt exactly what you just said there, Matt, that on the Happy Feet 1, yes, the sound drove the pictures. The pictures were coming in, it was looking fantastic. Da, 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 da. Now, move on a few years from that, and the animators have such speed with their tools that they're able to change, once they've got the character builds and the models and whatever, they're able to change very, very fast. So you see the same amount of changes from a picture editorial sense nowadays as you do and can with live action. So, yeah, I mean, seriously, it's no different, between the two things. And as you say, with animation, I even liken it to reading a novel. It can go anywhere. Absolutely anywhere. Where a character was on the right-hand side of screen and panning to the left, the next time you see it, it could be going the other way. What happened there? It's like, that's how easy it is to pick it up and move it over there and do a bit of that. And we found that a lot in Happy Feet 2, Lego, Guardians of Gahul, then called Legends of the Guardian. That you've got a one owl flying through the air, and then the next time you see the film, there's another 4. Okay, there's another. Oh, hang on, now there's another 50 owls flying, and so and that's heading towards the final mix.
Yeah, exactly.
So even in content, not only picture edit, with animation it's even more terrifying because it's actually content within the one frame. Yeah. That is just building and building and building. Yeah,
that's just unbelievable. Yeah, that's really insightful.
It's pretty mental.
And so in terms of, I mean, your credits, if anyone's looked at your IMDb in the description below, they'll see that obviously you wear a couple of hats, 3 kind of main hats in terms of your sound design and your re-recording mixer and supervising sound editor. Could you just explain how you kind of wear all 3 hats and how you put them all on your head?
Well, as supervising sound editor, it's pretty well as the description applies. I'm responsible to the filmmaking team. They're going to come to me. I have support there. I have a wonderful woman who is my right hand, who is able to, deal with a lot of emails and information sharing. But generally speaking, that responsibility is on the head. In terms of sound design, as I say, I pick a few things that I think are primacy in terms of the effects, but I then have a supervising effects editor. They become my other arm. So we collaborate throughout that period, and we keep it all story. Also with sound design, there's two ways of thinking. You can call sound design someone who is building a sound or a noise for a particular item, and they sit there with a MIDI keyboard and they can create some noises. That's one way of looking at it. The other way I like to look at it is actually like the production design. It is the whole thing. It is not just about the sound effect, as some people might have thought sound design is. So in my interpretation from Walter Murch and all the things from the moment that credit even became in existence, my feeling was it is about the entirety of the project, and that actually not only includes dialogue and crowd and everything else. It's the design of the whole piece, which then leads to re-recording mixing. Now, mixing for me is I could, in my early part of my career, I could easily sit back and say, okay, we've now got our experienced re-recording mixers, that's what they do. We've got an effects guy, we've got a dialogue guy, and who's going to handle the music as well, and I could let it go, and I could just bark orders from the back of the couch. I found that didn't suit me because I do the atmospherics, or the backgrounds, as our US counterparts like to call it, and setting the world. That's the first thing I mix. So it gives us a world to sit in. It gives us a body. Then, obviously, the dialogues, I'm looking for clarity and body warmth. Always, giving human beings body warmth. So I'm looking for not barking dialogues. Nothing is going to be what I like to call go-away sounds, which can come from the human voice as well. So try to keep everything as warm and engaging as possible, and the effects and the Foley start to come. So what I tend to do is I don't charge an extra fee to be a re-recording mixer. I'm just there, and I will have, generally speaking, 2 mixers down the front on the console, whether it's a Neve or a Harrison or whatever. I'll tend to sit at the back. I'll be feeding into the desk whatever components I've got, whether it's I'll be taking crowd, I'll be doing special design effects and atmospherics, let's say. And so, or it can be any number of things, but I'll sit generally on an icon at the back and feeding the console. So I try to be more in line so I can hear what the director is saying. So I'm not down the front with my back to them, and I'm giving a governance to the guys down the front as best as I can for the vision that I was hoping to go for, and of course in collaboration with my knowledge of the filmmaker, having spent the post period, in sound edit. My knowledge is obviously, carrying with that supervising sound editor and imparting that to the mixers who generally come on, in those last 8 weeks of the job, and they haven't had the history. So, and by me taking certain components, it actually frees up, particularly the effects mixer. It frees up a lot of the unnecessary overwork for them, where they can concentrate more on the width and the scale and the beauty of the sound effects themselves. It frees them up so they don't have to worry about doing crowds and don't have to. So because a lot of that stuff can get quite dense, and yeah. So I think I try to do it as a bit of a 3-pack thing, mixing event. And music, tends to sort of, be over the other side of the room with the music editor there, doing the changes as required, feeding the console, for the dialogue music mixer. So that's why I take on the 3 roles, because I feel that it's important for a in terms of whatever those 3 roles mean. It just happens to be that's what I do.
Yeah, it seems like it adds a better continuity to the whole thing, especially when you're already supervising sound editor and then so integral in building all those effects.
Well, that's the thing, it kind of just keeps it keeps us all as one mind, and I feel that you might think, oh, it's a bit of a taskmaster or a what do you call it, can't let one of those people that are control freaks. But it's not really about that. It's about keeping everyone of a one mind, But having said that, obviously things are changing and getting better by everyone else's mind as well, and what they're able to bring, and to free people up, from their important role, which is doing the dialogues, concentrating on clarity and body warmth, effects. When there's an effects time, everyone's hands off. It's all yours, and it's a sharing and handing the baton, and not overloading any one person, because it's getting harder and bigger all the time. With the technology that we have and the demands on sound these days, it's just monstrous at times. So I'm just trying to always free people up to do their best work and have their own feel and creativity, with it. And we all work as a team. Oh, that's no good. Oh, I couldn't hear that line. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm too loud there. Sorry, guys. I'm constantly in check with myself. Always asking, am I too loud there? Is it that? Oh, that's a bit harsh. I need some EQ on that or whatever. So I just try to keep the collaboration going,
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, just in terms of finding levels, because again, a lot of people are finding or asking me for kind of specific levels of what I do, and it's never really about that. It's about some sort of ratio. But how do you go about building your own ratio? Does it start with your backgrounds and build from there, or?
No, it always starts with dialogue. So once I find a clarity sweet spot in the dialogues, very little compression, clean it up and equalize the production as best I can from the outset, and that's where it's got to stay. So I tend to pre-dub in a more it's a decent sized room, but it's a bit of a more of a near field situation. So I'm at about 82, knowing that it's like at the end of the day it's going to be 85, and I just find that spot where the dialogues are strong but not biting. And clear. And then once we get that first temp mix of the dialogues down, then I'll go into atmospheres, but I'll give the dialogues first up to everybody else. So there's no point putting a car door that is too loud over someone talking as they step out of the car. So they know where, and a lot of the effects editors now are doing a lot of mixing themselves within their own infrastructure. If you're building a car crash, it could easily be up to 25 channels of material, but each of those things, in terms of schedule, if we had to go through like in the old days and listen to every one of those 25 channels for every car crash in Mad Max, you would be there. We'd be there for months on Sundays. So the effects editors are building a lot of that design infrastructure within their own componentry already. So they know where the glass, where the metal's got to be, where the squeak's got to be, or where the explosion might be, but sitting underneath any dialogue that might be present. So they're digging the holes and finding the action to follow and handing over. Someone speaks, that's important. Move, 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 move. Keep people on the wave. Keep them on the wave as best you can. You don't always win. You don't always... Obviously, it's like it's not an exact science, but it's just what we strive for. But dialogues are key, again.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And you mentioned 82 going to 85. A lot of people are going to be kind of just looking at their Pro Tools rig or whatever and just seeing that it starts at 0 is the maximum that we can go to. How does that kind of translate?
I'm getting, it depends on your room size, obviously. And so, if I was to be mixing in my room, I've got those big Genelecs, whatever the name number is of those, and I found if I was to mix at 85, I know once I got into a big room, it's going to be, far too low, So I'm bringing down to 82, so I know that once it hits a big room, a big theatre, and being Dolby 7 at 85, I know it's going to have the sound power. Quite often, I'm pushing again. I could easily take that dialogue level once it's in a big room like that and maybe popping it up, 1.5 dB just to get over. Now the music's arrived. It's kind of like, you're just finding your way, and like your dialogue's at about -10, it's feeling good. You can feel it straight away as soon as you just click that bite in dialogues, particularly that mid-range or that high sort of mids, about that 5K bite. You just go, oh, okay, now I'm in trouble. The S's are biting me. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So once you find that, I mean, clearly, once you know where you're going, where you're finishing, I try to take a quick demo of what maybe just as a temp mix and have a quick listen and see how the world's sitting, where we're going to be finishing the project. When I'm talking pre-dubs, you've got to try and keep costs down. The big stages are worth a lot of money per hour. You're trying to save money, so you don't want to pay $900 an hour to pre-dub if you can avoid it. Now, in the day that's still happening in Hollywood a lot, you're spending a lot of money, for the big films in these massive rooms. I don't see the need for that because it can be done in, in the box, live, and in smaller rooms that are properly calibrated. So those rooms have got to be checked where the finish is going to be. But, you know, I can feel it in my room. It all depends on the, you know, SPL of where you are is I know that once it's dialogues is the key. You know, and if you take a little break, you walk out, you let your ears clear after a couple of hours work or whatever, you walk back in and you play an explosion with tearing metal. And if you blanch, you know you're in trouble. So you've got to go back and revisit. You know, sometimes even that again through the we use that word again, that iterative process of temp mixing, you can feel where you might have been in a rush where you had 5 days to get like a 2.5-hour movie out. By the time you're doing temp mix number 2, you go, what was I thinking? You know, like you might have been tired and whatever. And you are obviously always self-correcting as well. You know, oh, the music is way too loud there. It's like, you know, oh, that sword hit. You know, so yeah, you know, it's knowing your own space, but checking where you're finishing at the end of the day.
Yeah,
you can feel it. I mean, I don't like loud. Point blank. And when I go to the movies and I'm feeling assaulted by it and it starts to hurt me, my first question is it the cinema? Because I cannot believe that anyone would mix it that loud. To what end do you do that? But also what I've noticed is there is a bit of a there's a bit of a revolt in the youth today. I can just I've got 2 sons, one 12 and one 14 or 15, and if they cop loud noises, they immediately turn away from the film. They just or music or whatever. So I'm seeing that kids are smarter these days. They're protecting their ears, and if it's not enjoyable and comfortable, it's just not good.
No, it's so, very, very true.
It's got to be, you know.
Yeah, no, it's very true. There's a recent example that probably loads of people have seen. It's going to be Interstellar, and how that's been used in more of an artistic sense. And there's again the whole battle, I guess, it comes down to kind of the craft versus the art in a kind of way, which is I think is a very interesting point just to bring up for sound, for the kind of...
Well, I know all those arguments as well from Interstellar, and, you know, the complaints of the dialogue being lost here and there, effects or music too loud, blah, blah, blah. But I went into that film thinking that this was going to disturb me, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very, very cleverly crafted like that, where... and I looked at, I don't know Christopher Nolan at all, but I looked at the areas that were obviously in contention of dialogue being difficult to understand and whatever, but I didn't mind it. The reason I didn't mind it is because I really did feel that, again, it was character-driven and the environment-driven. And I completely kind of got what was happening, because there's 2 ways of looking at dialogue. There's 2 ways. The first way is like I've been banging on about clarity, which, you know, protecting Fitzgerald, all that's a no-brainer. But there is another sense of dialogue that can be used like an effect, which I call behavioural. So if behavioural dialogue gives you a sense of the world that is happening and the behaviour only, you don't necessarily need to pick up every line of dialogue if it's about anxiety or frustrations or danger or whatever might be happening in the given world. So behavioural dialogue has a huge benefit as well, and that's why I loved Interstellar and the soundtrack for that, and I thought it was very brave, and even though they got a lot of negative results from it, I don't think they should be at all worried about it or care. I was completely in the same boat. I don't know if it was because people were just backlashing so much that then it meant that my... what I found about Interstellar was that it wasn't...
I mean, to be honest, like the first thing, it wasn't even the sound. It was the out of focus thing. I don't know if you found that in the cinema. That, I mean, yeah, that apart from anything else, just like blew me away and took me out of the story. But I could completely see from a sound point of view. I mean, it's just from being technical and just looking at it, going, wait a minute, like film brain kicks in and goes, bad. But yeah, I could totally appreciate what they were doing, and I heard every single line, I think, apart from one.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, Matthew McConaughey is difficult to understand at the best of times.
Well, exactly. And same with Michael Caine. There's such a difference in the pronunciations. It's just off the chart. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I thought it was just really interesting that the debate came up in itself. I think because a lot of people, especially when, for instance, I mean, if we come back to story and recent bigger films, not really having, I mean, being sequels and being whatever, I think people are getting kind of itchy feet towards getting back to some kind of original, interesting, something a bit different. I think people have been kind of, I've definitely been kind of asking that.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's where the wonderful filmmakers like Wes Anderson and the Grand Budapest and Her, people like films like that are just it's all coming back to interesting stories with interesting characters, and and having something that is worth showing about the human condition, I think, is just is where we're starting to go. Whether superhero movies, what longevity they've got now is a bit hard to tell. Although they seem to still be making billions of dollars around the world, so they obviously are still working. But give me a human drama, any day,
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and especially for things like Nightcrawler and some of the others that are coming out for, just again those like real, just getting back to the basics, just tell.
Well, seeing Lockie and stuff, and this is where sound recorders are so very, very important. And like if the directors, the filmmakers on the day were able to give the location mixers an opportunity to get in there, to get their best microphones, to enable the cast to do what they do best, is so very important. And I would say that cinematographers and costume makers, where to be able to place microphones that best suit. I think if all those guys understood the need and they backed the location mixer, the production mixer, it only benefits everybody. Because at the end of the day, no one's really going to be overly judging or watching the cinematography necessarily. They're going to be wanting to see what the character is doing. So whatever a production mixer can do to get that body warmth in there and allow the boom to get in, if cinematographers would back that, I think is very, very important.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting. There's been really interesting talks just on, for instance, Mark Weingarten, who was production mixer on Interstellar, but he also did some of David Lynch's films as well. And David Lynch, just his approach to it was, for instance, in a really wide shot in Hugo, was when he said, we need to get in there with a boom for the coverage of the lines or whatever, he just said, just go in the wide shot and I'll just paint you out. And things like that, and it was just
that's where we have the ability now. Because what I'm finding is there's so many radio mics out on set now because you've got 5 cameras all rolling at once, and there's just nowhere for the boomy to get in. It's been a bit of a tragedy over the last 5-6 years. That digital filmmaking, it's just so much easier to throw the cameras in and sound suffers. But having seen, what, where the budget is allowing visual effects to... Are you still there? Oh.
Oh, am I back?
You're back? I still can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay.
well, I was just saying
five cameras.
Oh, well, yeah, all that stuff, and not allowing a boom to get in. It's been a real problem, and I think having seen what happened on Les Mis, where the mics were so very important, and they painted them out later, that's a really great sort of start to something new and a care for sound. You know, you don't want Hugh Jackman having to replicate that material, and I think a lot of the time when I see major pieces of dramatic acting that you can't get back in ADR, there's no way you'd even attempt it, that you've just got to go with it. And so that's where you go, all right, you know, there might be crunchy closed noise over the microphone, there might be distortion involved, there might be off mic where the actors turn their heads, but you know what? We're going with this because the dialogue and the delivery is so real and potent that we're just going to go there, and I believe the audience is going to be on the journey with you anyway, and are going to stay on the wave. So it's not necessarily always about the perfect dialogue. It's whatever is working in the moment to stay on the wave, as it were.
Yeah, you know? I think it's all coming back to your original point of just it's all about the story, it's all about that emotion, and just trying to just convey that in so many different ways, from quality to the actual words to
else. I would never sacrifice performance for technical beauty at all. Never. It's that magic that is going to happen on the day in the moment that you want to protect, and just get the best clarity out of it you can. So look, if there is a budget for these the ability to have boom swingers being painted out in post, I'm all for that, because the sound recordist needs a chance.
Yeah, I will happily paint myself green and just get on in there. That would be open up worlds of opportunity.
That's right. You never know what you might. You could end up by being James Dean in there or something.
Exactly. No, fantastic. Well, I'm very conscious that we've come up to our hour, even with the technical difficulties, which again I will.
No, that's fine, mate. That's cool.
But I mean, it's just been fantastic having you on. There's so much more, so we will definitely have another chat very soon, because it's all about just linking everyone together.
Well, it's been most enjoyable. I hope that I haven't banged on and bored people too much, but look, I appreciate you getting in contact, and I hope to hear from you again soon if anyone's interested.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's so many more topics, and especially when you're mixing a craft with the art, it just fuses together into one big melting pot of ideas, essentially, to how we meld the two together. That's
right.
Really exciting.
Well, and at the end of the day, it is all about collaboration and finding those people that you like to work with, and So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I
wish I could see you. I'm speaking to a black screen here, but that's all
right. Well, the funny thing is I'm popping up on my side, so I don't know if I can't even check any comments to see what anyone else is saying at the same time. So I have no way of knowing, but at least my voice will carry on, as they say. But
well, thank you very much, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'll just bow out now to our viewers, and then just hand over to you for the final words, and then we can have a little personal wrap up once we go offline. So goodbye from me, and final words from you, Wayne.
Final words is thank you for listening, and I hope that my career has given you guys something to think about, and all I can say is good luck with everybody, to everybody, and keep on fighting the good fight, because I honestly believe that with sound and image, you get really the biggest bang for the buck at the end of the day. So, yeah, thanks for listening. I'll see you later from rainy Sydney. Cheers.
Fantastic. Goodbye, guys.